Chapter 8. The Roots of History.
No one knew exactly where the excavation site was located. The arid Aristan is unfathomable in its emptiness. And this particular place was an insignificant spot in that desolate wasteland of endless sand. A place that would be almost impossible to find even for those who knew its exact location. Those riders had done it. But they knew that their success had depended on the favor of great allies. They were there. The Atani, the 12 scions of Maldaroth, the flayed prince. They are the vanguard of the live Atani, the Red Raiders, who are countless in number. This is their domain. Having returned to the world, this hellish place belonged to them with all its dangers. Kensel looked around. It was an oasis of activity in the middle of a dead land. His eyes searched for those sinister beings. None of them revealed their presence, but he knew that their dark spirits were alive somewhere in the surrounding area, countering the innumerable threats that inhabited this vast, barren land. Ahead of him, countless laborers swarmed like ants over a forest of scaffolding constructed upon the baking sand. As they worked tirelessly, these soulless workers were harassed by a handful of orcs whose whips were of no use against their lifeless, putrid flesh. At the very center of this hive of activity, a strange shape stood high and tall above the ground. It was a twisted crest of dark stone. Like a sharp spearhead, it surged upward several feet from the embrace of the sand, scorched by the tyrannical gaze of the twin suns hanging in the cloudless blue sky. In this scarred desert landscape, there seemed to be no time for rest. He glanced back at the caravan he had joined at a free port on the rugged coast, now dozens of miles away. A multitude of wagons laden with supplies stretched behind him like a snake crawling across the sand. With them came a fresh, shambling mass of workers. They were nothing more than decomposing corpses who had been dragged from their graves, or perhaps more accurately, had never been allowed to fill any. He left the merchants to deal with the overseers and dismounted without further delay. His mission there was far more important than the mere delivery of goods. He waded through the morass of workers and handcarts, digging into the sand, until he came upon one of the orcs, who seemed to be in command of this unconventional and chaotic excavation. Taking off the cloak that had shielded him from the searing wind during his journey, he asked for a name.
Master Sorom.
The orc pointed to a group of figures standing on an elevated area of ground overlooking the excavation site. Satisfied with the directions received, the messenger left the orc overseer to his duties and walked away. He did not need to be told which of the group corresponded to the man he was looking for. Sorom towered high above the others who accompanied him. His lion's mane was covered by a dirty turban that shielded him from the scorching heat of the suns. The Lionid stood out among the others, even without trying. With a weary step, the messenger began to walk up the slope of the small hill towards him. Even before he reached his destination, the impressive Lionid had already seen him.
"Ah, the supplies. They've arrived at last,"
he said, folding up the map he had been examining with his officers and turning to face the messenger.
"I've been expecting them for weeks."
I'm afraid my presence here has nothing to do with your supplies, Master Sorom.
The messenger said, raising his hands in sign of apology. The Lionid frowned down at him from his elevated position.
Ibros Kensel, agent of the Society of Elos. I am here at the express request of Archduke Velga.
Sorom stared at the insignia on the emissary's robes.
"There was a time when wearing these emblems would have cost you your life, Ibros Kensel,"
he said. pointing to the runes and symbols that adorned his clothing. Ibros looked down at his garments.
Fortunately for all of us, Master Sorom, that time is now a part of history.
Oh, yes. Fortunately for many.
The Lionid added with obvious irony. Despite the unexpected visit, the Lionid began to walk away with the intention of attending to other business. The Ilos agent was forced to follow his brisk pace.
And what does Velger intend to do by sending me one of his society's lackeys? Spy on me or assassinate me?
I am here for none of these things, Master.
He added, admiring the sarcasm of the renowned Lionid.
I am merely an emissary.
Sorom paused for a moment. Ibros was grateful for this respite, as following the giant's footsteps was no easy task.
Do you know, Ibros Kensel, what we have found here?
He asked dryly, sweeping his formidable arm across the site of this colossal excavation.
Do you know what lurks beneath these burning sands?
The emissary paused for a moment to contemplate the chaotic scene before him and the strange pointed stone that twisted dozens of feet above the sand.
I have no idea, Master.
He confessed with sincerity.
My rank in the society is not as high as you might imagine.
No, of course not,
the Lionid said.
For your information, Agent Cancel, beneath this ocean of dead sand sleeps a power such as will shake the foundations of all that is known. A secret so well hidden that it has taken 100 generations to find it. As you will understand, Ibros Cancel, I am a very busy man, so if you have a message for me, please be brief and let me do my work.
Reacting to the Lionid's urgency, the envoy hurriedly searched his pocket for the message he had jealously guarded for the Lionid.
My apologies, Master,
he said, handing him a letter bearing the personal crest of the Moon of the Abyss.
If you would be so kind as to accompany me to the caravans, there is something else that Archduke Velger would like you to have.
Sorom eyed the wax seal cautiously, wondering what new foolishness would come from the mainland this time. With a reluctant gesture, he indicated to the envoy that he was ready to accompany him to the train of caravans. On the way, Sorom did not hesitate to give a few orders to his foreman and check that the work was being done according to his instructions. The caravan area was already a hive of activity, with supplies being unloaded and taken away. They passed the column of new forced laborers, chained at the neck. The Lionid stood for a moment, studying the trail of shuffling bodies. 1,000 thoughts crossed his mind, but he silenced them all. At last, they stopped in front of one of the many wagons that occupied the zone.
Please, sir, first the letter.
At first, Sorom didn't know what he was meant to do. It was only after Ibros gestured to him a couple of times that he realized he was supposed to open and read the message. He did so with a certain reluctance, unfolding the finely written calligraphy in front of him. As always, it began with a long, tedious introduction. He was tired of such formality, but the news immediately caught his attention.
The Conclave has discovered signs of the awakening.
Read one of the lines.
Your presence on the continent is once again required. You must seek out the awakened one, if he truly exists. You will be granted all of the usual benefits and privileges. You have complete authority and discretion in this matter. As is our custom, we will advance you a portion of your fee.
The messenger had taken the liberty of opening the wagon while Sorom was still absorbed in reading the message. When the Lionid lifted his eyes from the page, he found a wagon with several large chests inside. Each one was filled to the brim with golden maidens.
I have orders to escort you back, Master.
Sorom carefully folded the parchment and tucked it into his robes. He glanced sideways at the excavation and the activity within it. Then his gaze returned to the large, shining gold coins. He would be grateful to get away from the unbearable heat for a while.